You're welcome.
Laura, can we mute Gary, Councilmember Kraus?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Laura, can we mute Gary, Councilmember Kraus?
Yes.
Ready to go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Laura, can we mute Gary? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give it a few minutes while we have other board members join.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody.
That's right, Gary. Happy St. Patrick's Day. There's the birthday boy. We are live, everyone, but do you want to acknowledge Mayor Sedgley on his birthday?
And he's not streaming from a bar.
No. That's why we're live. Yeah, we're all live right now, and this is being recorded. So
Understood, Chair. Understood.
yeah.
Come on, lighten up a little.
All right. So, Laura, you'll tell me when we have quorum and we can start.
Great. We'll be ready in just a moment.
There'll be some people showing up in the next couple of minutes. The Cal Cities session with Bill Dodd went a little long.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Uh-huh.
I guess we can blame Senator Dodd for that.
Yep, it just wound up. I was there also. So
We're working extra hard on your birthday, Mayor.
I know, dueling Zooms. Let's see if I can get you guys up off the phone and on the big screen.
All right. Laura, do we have quorum?
We do have a quorum. Yes, we do.
All right. Let me know when we can start.
We may begin.
All right. Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to the Napa Valley Transportation Authority Tax Agency meeting for Wednesday, March 17th at 1:31 a.m. We're going to call the meeting to order. Laura, do we have the preamble to roll?
We do.
Perfect. If you can roll that, please.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar pursuant to the provision of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being webcast on the NVTA website. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available at a later time on the NVTA website. The chair will call upon board members, presenters, staff, and other speakers by name, ask them to speak clearly, and state their names before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers and may be part of the Zoom recording. Board members and members of the public participating by Zoom who wish to speak should use the raise hand feature or *9 on their phone. Teleconference attendees will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. Phone participants must unmute themselves by pressing *6. It is requested that public speakers state their name and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received at info@nvta.ca.gov after 5 p.m. yesterday will be entered into the record but not read out loud. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they are free to do so and should raise their hand. The chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Panelists should note that the chat feature is active. However, please be aware that anything typed in the chat will be subject to public disclosure. The chat feature is not active to attendees. In order to get the full Zoom experience, please make sure your application is up to date.
Thank you, Laura, for that. So let's move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. If Mayor Sedgley can lead us in the pledge on his birthday. Mayor Sedgley.
Thank you. I will lead our group in the pledge. I don't see a flag, but please, if you can, stand and follow me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor. Laura, if we can do a roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Here.
Mark Joseph,
Here.
Gary Kraus,
Here.
Chris Canny, Liz Alessio,
Present.
Scott Sedgley,
Here.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Here.
Belia Ramos,
Here.
Paul Doring,
Here.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Here.
John Dunbar.
Here.
Alternate for Carrie Dorman today, Eric Knight,
Here.
and Doug Weir.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to the adoption of the agenda. If there are no changes to the agenda for the tax agency, I will entertain a motion.
So moved. Paul Doring.
All right, first by Doring and second by Dunbar. Roll call vote, please. And before we do that, any public comment, Laura?
There are none.
All right, bring it back to the board. And if we can do roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning, Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Eric Knight,
Yes.
John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And for the record, Member Canning just joined. So
Thank
we'll
you.
move on to public comment. There's a time when anyone can address the tax agency on any item that's not on today's agenda. Laura, do we have any public comment?
We do not.
All right, we're going to move on to item 6, chairperson's report, MTC reports. We're going to defer that to the regular board meeting. Kate, do we have any director's update?
I do, Director. Thank you. Good afternoon and happy St. Patrick's Day and happy birthday to you, Director Sedgley. I just wanted to let the board know that 2 members of our Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee have resigned. We often refer to that committee as the ITAC. It's a public body that advises the board and staff on how to improve Measure T oversight. So the 2 members that resigned were Greg Rodino, who served as a member at large, and then Leon Bronning, who served as a member representing taxpayers groups. So NVTA staff is actively recruiting to replace those 2 positions, but I wanted to let the public know that they were open. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Kate, and we thank those members for their service and contributions to the tax agency. Before we move on, I see Director Kraus has his hand up. Director Kraus, do you have something to add at this point?
Yeah, I just was going to let you know that Chris Canning was going to attend, and I see he's online now.
Perfect.
Sorry
Record
for the late arrival, Chair.
reflects that Member Canning has joined, and thank you, Councilmember Kraus, for noting that as well. So let's move on to our consent item. We have 1 item on consent. Laura, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, we do not.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board. Any questions, discussions? You know what? I believe we do have public comment. I see Justin is raising his hand for consent item, which is the minutes of the February 17th meeting. Laura, can we confirm if the public member wishes to comment on this item?
I'm unmuting Justin now.
So I tried to do my PSI Zoomy, so I will try to keep my sound down. So that way I can watch this Zoomy same time I PSI Zoomy. So other thing is happy Patrick Day for all you guys. And I hope we can go back to the form room soon. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, Justin. I appreciate your comments about St. Patrick's Day and being able to have in-person meetings. So we're going to bring it back to the consent item, which is for the minutes of the February 17th meeting. We see no public comment, so we'll bring it back to the board. Entertain a motion for approval.
Dunbar motion.
All right, first by
Joseph,
Dunbar,
second.
second by Joseph. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Eric Knight,
I will abstain. Thank you.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, motion passes with a noted abstention from Director Knight. All right, moving on to your regular items, 9.1. This is the Napa Valley Transportation Authority Tax Authority fiscal year end 1920 financial update. This is an informational item found on page 9 to 45. Antonio, take it away.
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman Alfredo Pedroza and members of the board. My name is Antonio Honorado. I'm the Director of Finance here for the Napa Valley Transportation Authority. For this item, staff is asking the board of the Napa Valley Transportation Authority Tax Agency to accept and file the annual financial statements with independent auditors report for the years ending June 30th, 2020 and 2019, the management letter to the board of directors from the auditors, and also the compliance and performance audit reports for the city of Napa and the town of Yountville. All those documents are in attachments in this memo. I've prepared a slide deck which summarizes the findings of the financial statements and the compliance and performance audits for the city and the town. So while we bring that up, if you could go to the next slide, please. So for this, we're going to speak briefly about the financial audit. This was our first year-over-year snapshot of the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in net position. I would note that this is a financial audit for the tax agency, not a Measure T special revenue fund audit, which is managed by each jurisdiction. As you can see from this slide, revenues dipped in fiscal year 20 from the prior year. The obvious reason for this was, of course, the effects due to the pandemic had on tax generations during the last months of the year in fiscal year 20. However, staff originally projected a loss between 15 to 25%. But once the dust settled, we received real data. Revenues decreased just a little over 5%. On the expenditure side, in the lower part of the slide, administration represents NVTA's administrative expenses for overseeing the fund balance, as well as the ITOX expenses for such items like the audits. Maintenance represents the formula funds, which are then passed on to the jurisdictions. The ending net position, again, represents the accumulated balance of the NVTA's administration of 1% that hasn't been expensed, as well as any accumulated balances for the ITOC. Next slide, please. As in table 1 of the memo, you can see here what each jurisdiction received in Measure T funds. Including these amounts are also the interest that was generated when the funds were held prior to disbursement. Measure T funds are transmitted from the Department of Tax and Fee Administration at the end of each month, and the jurisdictions receive the proceeds quarterly. Lastly, the accompanying management letter had no current year findings or recommendations for the tax agency to consider. Next slide, please. Now we'll pivot and discuss the compliance and performance audits. So for just a little bit of background, the compliance and performance audits are non-financial audits to express an opinion as to whether the recipients complied with and the performance according to 3 documents: the voter approved ordinance in 2012, the master funding agreement executed in 2013, and the Measure T policies and procedures that were adopted in 2019. The ITAC has chosen to have these audits conducted on a triennial basis once we cycle through the first audits for each jurisdiction. The audits were performed in conformance of, for the performance audits were for 2 projects in the city of Napa, Westwood Phase 1, Trancas Street Phase 1. And for Yountville, it was the Yount Street paving project. The audits did reveal some inconsistencies in trying to conform between the 3 documents. We'll get to those inconsistencies momentarily. There were 8 areas of compliance and performance under review. There is an explanation of what each of these areas entail in the memo and the testing environment and the scope involved in each of these areas. So we'll review each of the areas right now. So the first was the maintenance of effort. Both the city and town met their maintenance of effort requirements. However, the auditors could not confirm when the submissions occurred. This is where one of those administrative wrinkles was revealed. Although both jurisdictions submitted the required documents, the auditors could not readily verify when those submissions occurred. The master funding agreement, which again was executed back in 2013, directed these MOE certifications must be sent prior to December 31st. The only way to verify this occurrence was to preserve the emails with a timestamp. Staff at NVTA nor at the jurisdictions was aware that these emails should have been retained. Staff will update the master funding agreement to perhaps revise some of the obsolete language in the master funding agreement, which may not have the same relevance today as it did back in 2013. Also, we have created a new email address, measuret@nvta.ca.gov, to submit all documents. This way, required data will be held in a single email repository that can be archived rather than having the documents to send to an individual, which tends to get purged after some time, and perhaps that individual may no longer serve in that role as in finance or in project management, and email and historical emails may not get retained. So that's the corrective action for this area. Again, it's administrative. It's not a negative reflection on the city or the town. It was caught during the audit. The next area was the certification of the 5-year project list. Both the city and town complied. As such, there was no exceptions. The next area was project implementation reporting. No exceptions, but we again run into when the submissions took place because we didn't retain those emails. And again, the corrective action is to have a single repository of emails and perhaps revising some of our documents to reflect that as long as the deliverables were sent in the required deadlines, that the email submissions are not necessarily subject to for audit purposes. The next area was signage. Auditors could not verify that all large projects had signage. However, they did verify that the large projects that were subject to performance audit, the performance portion of the audit did have signage. I think to resolve this issue is perhaps to have a decal of some sort on a sign for a major project that could identify what that sign is for which project. And if those signs do get recycled to another project, just replace that decal. And that way the auditors can verify that proper signage did occur for those larger projects of greater than $250,000. The next area was separate accounting. Again, the master funding agreement specified at the time that Measure T funds would be deposited into a separate interest-bearing checking account. This was back in 2013. However, none of the jurisdictions actually deposit their funds into a separate interest-bearing checking account. They have separate fund balances and separate accounting general ledgers for each of their projects and for the Measure T fund. So this is where language in the master funding agreement is kind of obsolete, is not really applied for each jurisdiction. And so perhaps the master funding agreement most likely be amendment to reflect that there is separate fund accounting rather than a separate interest bearing account. Next area is record keeping, no exceptions. So both the town and the city did comply. Next area is financial reporting and audits. Again, verified documents were submitted as required, but the submission dates were unable to verify. That's where the Measure T email address comes into play once again. And lastly, the city and town had the 6.67 equivalent requirement. Both jurisdictions have committed revenues and that the auditors were able to verify. So the auditor's conclusion was both the city and town has complied in all material aspects of the compliance and performance audits. The issues that were discovered were administrative in nature. Although not part of the formal audit, the city and the town did have the opportunity to respond to the results of the audit, and the packet, the memo, the board packet does include a response letter from Steve Rogers, Yountville's town manager. Also, I would like to acknowledge that the public works departments and the finance staffs at the city and town for being responsive and for being patient. These are our first of these types of audits, and so there was a steep learning curve involved. I probably sent dozens of emails to staff at both jurisdictions, and they responded very quickly to the inquiries of the auditors and myself. So the next two jurisdictions on the audit list is the County of Napa and St. Helena for the current year, but they will actually audit the period from the start of Measure T, which is back in July 1st, 2018, to the end of the audit period. And then American Canyon and Calistoga will actually get the brunt. They'll get a 4-year audit for the start of the sorry, Chris, for these audits. But then we'll cycle through on a triennial basis every 3 years. These audits will expect to be occurred every 3 years thereafter. So that does conclude my report, and I can answer any questions that you may have at this point in time.
All right, thank you very much, Antonio. I want to confirm, under the agenda, it says informational only. Is this an action item that you're asking for, accept and file, or just informational?
I think it's information only because these audits have been completed. There's nothing further there's no further action to discuss. So
wonderful. All right, thank you very much for your thorough presentation. Board, any questions at this point? And I don't see anyone raising their hand. All right, Laura, do we have any public comment?
Director Canning here.
Yes, Director
Sorry,
had his physical hand up.
Yeah, I couldn't find my little button to push. Antonio, are we completely confident that we found nothing wrong with the town of Yountville? Should we check that again? Sorry, John.
Well, we pay the auditors to ensure that all portions of we can find something if we're really looking, but I think both the town and the city have substantially completed and were verified in all aspects of the audits.
Thank you for adding some.
Let the minutes reflect the answer to the rather snarky question.
All right. It's always good to have some good spirits back and forth. So appreciate that. Director Krause.
Yes, the results of the audit where it had some administrative issues that needed to be addressed. Are you going to forward those issues to the agencies that have not been audited as yet so that we can avoid that?
Well, my intent is to address those administrative actions. The administrative actions occur with the master funding agreement and perhaps the policies and procedures in terms of the timing and the dates of some of the submissions. Those are administrative actions that need to be addressed by the tax agency staff, so NVTA, and then we'll send out amendments to the master funding agreement, as well as perhaps the policies and procedures to all jurisdictions so they can agree to those. And therefore, when we have these audits next year, that the administrative issues are no longer issues.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Kraus. All right, seeing no further questions from board members. Laura, do we have any members of the public that wish to comment on this item?
I do not see any, no.
All right, Antonio, thank you for your presentation. I think Director Kraus asked a good question. How do we learn and share this with other municipalities? So great question, Councilman Kraus. All right, let's move on to our next item, 9.2, the draft Measure T report for the fiscal year 1819 and 1920, found on page 46 to 64. Alberto, take it away.
Good afternoon, board members. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, great. Alberto Esqueda, I'm a planner here at NVTA. I'm presenting item 9.2, the biennial Measure T report for fiscal years 1819 and 1920. The Measure T ordinance requires that the agency publish a biennial report in the newspaper of general circulation. What NVTA has taken that to mean is that NVTA will publish a Measure T report every other year in the Napa Valley Register. This is the first report of to meet that requirement. NVTA compiled the information for all the projects that were started by jurisdictions during the report's time frame, which is July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2020. We provided an overview of expenses and some general information that most people thought, or information that we thought people would be interested in. We compiled the segments that were funded by the ordinance. So we have over 23 miles of road, over 23,000 linear feet of sidewalk, and 238 curb ramps replaced. We also provided an overview of all the projects the jurisdictions worked on during those 2 years, and we highlighted projects from each jurisdiction. We highlighted 2. Those projects were meant to highlight the major projects that the jurisdictions worked on. And this is the draft copy of that plan, of that report, pardon me. We will be doing a condensed version for the register. It'll most likely be a table format with black and white, and so not as fancy as this report. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Alberto. A great presentation. Glad we're doing this report. Any initial questions from directors? See no hands. Laura, any members of the public wish to comment on this item?
There are not.
All right, this was an informational item. Again, a great report, Alberto. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to our next item, 9.3, fiscal year 1920 jurisdictions, maintenance of effort, MOE, overview and approval. Alberto, this is also you. This is found on page 65 to 121. Take it away.
As most of you know, jurisdictions are required to provide an annual certification for the maintenance of effort to show how much Measure T funds they've spent in the previous fiscal year. The certification before you is for fiscal year 1920, which covers July 1st through June 30th of 2020. The jurisdictions have provided documentation to support their expenses, which were approved via a resolution through their governing body. The ITAC has also reviewed this information at their March 3rd meeting, and it's before you for approval. I think most of you have already seen this data since it probably went through your councils or your board.
All right. Thank you very much, Antonio. Alberto, so any director questions, comments on this? Laura, any members of the public? Thank you for blowing that up, by the way. Definitely helps being able to see those numbers a little bit. Laura, any members of the public wish to comment on this item?
None that I see, no.
All right, Alberto, this is an approval, right? So you're asking for a motion on this to approve the reported MOE. So
Correct.
I see no hands raised. So with that, assuming no questions or discussion, I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved, Garcia.
All right, first by Member Garcia,
Joseph, second.
second by Director Joseph. American Canyon is in the house. All right, roll call vote, please.
Dan Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Eric Knight,
Yes.
John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much, Alberto. Moving on to future agenda items. All right, seeing no directors raise any future agenda items, we will adjourn to our next meeting, which is Friday, March 12th. You will be properly notified. With that, meeting adjourned. Well, I'm assuming you'll give me the go-ahead when we can start our regular board meeting.
Yes, one moment. Chair, as soon as we have the agenda up, we may call the meeting to order.
All right, I'm going to call to order the Napa Valley Transportation Authority meeting. It's regular meeting for Wednesday, March 17th at 2 p.m. If we can do roll call, please.
Yes, attendance was confirmed during roll call at the NVTA-TA meeting with no absences.
Thank you very much. Laura, let's move on to the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any members, any directors that wish to make any changes? Seeing none, Laura, do we have any public comment on the adoption of the agenda?
We do not.
All right, I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
So moved, Canning.
All right, I heard Vice Chair Leslie first, second by Canning. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Eric Knight,
Yes.
John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Laura. Let's move on to public comment. This is the time when any member of the public can address the board on any item that's not on today's agenda. Laura, do we have any public members that wish to comment at this time?
We do not.
All right, let's move on to chairpersons, board members, MTC and ABAG update. I will defer to our ABAG representatives. Do you have an update for the board? Member Garcia, Supervisor Ramos.
We reported last meeting, the February 18th ABAG meeting was canceled. Meeting coming up on the March 18th, tomorrow. Of note on the agenda is a, hang on a second, let me find the document here. Adoption of resiliency, climate adaptation principles. There's a number of bills related in this on this agenda item. I would imagine there'll be a rather robust conversation about this. A lot of the things those that were just at the meeting with State Senator Bill Dodd, California cities, noted that there was a lot similarity between what's on this agenda item with MTC ABAG and North Bay concerns. So stay tuned.
All right, thank you, Mayor Garcia. And I'm going to ask any other members that are not muted, please mute yourself, just so that way there's no static. Thank you. Supervisor Ramos, anything to add? All right, Sounds like we don't. So moving on to MTC report. Busy month at MTC. The distribution of the CRISA funds were discussed at the program allocation meeting. Overall, the MTC to NPO received $982 million. Some of it was restricted off the top, but in terms of what it means to us locally, we were able to secure $1.5 million for Napa County. Through all the CARES Act funding in this funding, Napa County did receive $5.9 million in stimulus funding. Again, those are dollars that both the director and I fought to make sure Napa County was well represented, identifying other things we did to try to be innovative, but also cut costs and try to restore ridership, which is the foundation to everything we're doing from a recovery standpoint. So that's a little bit on the funding. As chair of MTC, we have convened in terms of working with ABAG, a new housing committee, the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority, which is going to be chaired by Mayor Libby Shaft. Housing is a priority, as we've all talked about it, but we have to move from talking to action. So this committee is going to be working closely with the legislator, trying to secure more funding. We do have Mayor Arreguin from Berkeley, who's the president of ABAG, has submitted a budget request with Assemblymember Chu of $18.5 million to be the catalyst around this. Both the mayor and I are working together with some of the agencies that are housing advocates, Enterprise, and others, and also community foundations. And we're trying to bring the Napa Community Foundation into the mix as well. Again, how do we try to bring more resources to see more housing be built, eliminate some of the impediments that make it more expensive to build? On the Blue Ribbon Committee, we continue to tackle some of the initiatives which are centered around, again, restoring ridership, but really focusing on those transit-dependent riders. That's really been something that we've seen arise as a top priority for the region. So we continue to advocate on that. We continue to talk about the network planner in high-level overview. In other counties, there's multiple operators. Napa County is blessed that we don't, but just imagine in some counties they're having to deal with multiple operators, multiple general managers, and sometimes there's challenges in coordinating those schedules for the benefit of riders. So that is a priority as we try to recover it from this pandemic. So that's my report. I'll see if there's any questions from board members on the ABAG report or the MTC report. Seeing none.
Chair Pedrosa?
Yes.
Real quick, sorry, I don't have access to the automatic hand. I just want to commend you for your great work and representation on MTC on behalf of NVTA and Napa County in our jurisdiction. So thank you for your great work and advocacy. Thank you very much, Vice Chair. I'm recommended by the mayors and council members and the board of supervisors. So it truly is an honor. And we're always reminded while we're there from a regional capacity, it's how do we bring more resources back home? So our charge is particular, but thank you for those kind words, Vice Chair. All right, director's update. Kate.
Right. Well, hello again. I wanted to bring your attention to a couple of the items that you'll hear more about, well, at least one on today's agenda, and that's the releasing the countywide transportation plan for public comment. The name of the plan is Advancing Mobility 2045. The plan is a culmination of almost 2 years of work, and the effort evaluates Napa's changing demographics, travel behaviors, resilience, and other factors that will influence the way we travel over the next 25 years. So the draft plan will be available for public review on March 23rd through April 23rd. And when it is released, there'll be 2 public meetings. The first meeting will be a Spanish Facebook Live event on April 7th from 5 to 6 with Chair Pedrosa, County and City of Napa staff. And the second session will be an English Q&A session on April 8th from 5:30 to 6:30. And we invite board member participation. In fact, we encourage it. Additional information will be sent to you that will request your participation or ask if you plan to attend. Once the draft document is made public, members of the public will also be able to make comments on an interactive PDF format. That's new, so they can just write on the document itself. And I'd like to acknowledge NVTA staff for the immense amount of work and thoughtfulness that went into this plan. Specifically, I wanted to call out Alberto Esqueda, who is the project manager. I mean, all of us participated, but Alberto is the one that sort of dragged the ball and chain to this event or to this time. I also wanted to acknowledge Danielle Schmitz and Antonio Norado and both their teams who together really pulled this plan together. So I also wanted to draw your attention to something that's typically not on the consent calendar, but it's a very long agenda today. So we put it on consent, and that's the overall work plan. This really summarizes the work that we do over the 2-year budget period. This was for budget period 2021 and 2022. You know, if you want to know more about what NVTA is doing, that's where you look. It talks about all the plans and the programs. And so I just wanted to make sure that members of the public had that information so that they can look further into the work that we do here at NVTA. Governor Newsom announced that effective March 15th, so 2 days ago, that public transit workers have been deemed essential workers and are now on the priority list to receive vaccines. NVTA is working with the county, and thanks Director Alicio and Chair Throsa for helping. We got also 19 spots from the Queen, or I guess called Providence now. And we are populating those spots. And I think now combined, we'll have about 40 people vaccinated. There's a number of transit workers and administrative staff that have already been able to schedule appointments elsewhere. So hopefully we'll be able to have the whole system vaccinated in the next month or so. And in that vein, the Vine Transit System is now offering free rides for individuals with COVID-19 vaccine appointments. A number of the other Bay Area transit operators are doing the same. And this information is collectively posted in the Bay Area Healthy Transit Plan. So let's see. Oh, good news is that, you know, our Federal Transit Administration funds comes in on formula, and the formula is based on population because we're a small urbanized area here in Napa. We have an opportunity to get more money in a program called the Small Transit Intensive City Program, otherwise known as STIC. And it requires certain performance levels, meeting targets. And we met 3 of the 6 this year, in spite of the fact that we were in a situation with the pandemic and pretty much slowing down and ridership going down. And we tied with Soul Trans for having more than any other small urbanized area of the 7 small urbanized areas and the multiple small transit systems in the region. So that brought in an additional $828,000. So good work, team. And then last but not least, last month you were informed by Chair Pedrosa that he was nominated to be the next MTC chair. And that was formalized in a vote at the February 24th commission meeting. So I just wanted to offer my congratulations and a very successful 2 years. Hopefully we'll have some opportunities to go to Washington when the pandemic is over and really fight for collective regional improvements for transportation. So congrats. And that concludes my report. You're
Chair,
muted.
you are muted.
You would think that I would know this by now. Thank you for that. It's an honor to be able to represent Napa County, and I appreciate your partnership as well, Kate, as we try to fight for Napa County in the region. So any questions for Director Miller? Seeing none, let's move on to Caltrans update. Do we have an update today from Caltrans?
We don't, and apologies. Laura will no longer put it on the calendar or on the agenda unless we have
no worries.
Next month. She's got a presentation.
All right, so let's move on to consent items. Under 9, we have a few consent items.
Chair, one note on the consent items. Upon approval for 9.1, which was our meeting minutes for the last February meeting, we noted that the item of 12.4 was recounted and did indeed pass, even though stated during the meeting it was a failed motion. So that is reflected in our minutes.
Thank you for that clarification.
Absolutely.
All right. So I know Director Knight probably will have to abstain on the minutes. So why don't we do 2 motions so that way he might be able to participate on it. Director Knight, is that okay with you?
Thank you.
All right, so let's take 2 different motions, but before that, let's see if there's any members of the public that have any comments on the entire consent calendar.
I'm not seeing any.
All right, so we're going to entertain 2 separate motions. The first one's going to be to move consent item 9.1, which is
Dunbar,
the minutes.
so moved.
All right.
Garcia,
First by,
second.
all right, first by Dunbar, second by Garcia. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Aye.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Elia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Eric Knight,
Abstain. Thank you.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, let's move on to the balance of our consent, which is 9.2 to 9.9. I will entertain a motion.
Dunbar, so moved.
Ellsworth, second.
All right, first by Dunbar, second by Ellsworth. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Elia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Eric Knight,
Aye.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you, Laura. Let's move on to our regular items. 10.1, proposed organizational restructure of the Napa Valley Transportation Authority. This is found on page 180 to 186. Laura, I believe you're presenting this.
I am.
All right, go ahead, take it away.
So in addition to being your board secretary, I am the NVTA office manager and I oversee human resources. So I will be presenting item 10.1, proposed changes to the NVTA organizational chart. And the recommendation is that the board approve a refinement of our organizational responsibilities to include a new position of administrative analyst for Measure T. And currently these duties are all being distributed amongst several different staff members in addition to their full workloads within their current job descriptions. And so there is a lot for them to take on and a lot to do in addition to the Measure T admin duties. So the Measure T program is growing and it would better serve the needs of the agency to have just one dedicated staff member oversee those responsibilities. And you'll see that there is a fiscal impact for the salary range plus benefits. And we would be able to budget that under the Measure T 1% administrative fund. And in your agenda packet with the proposed organizational chart, there is also a proposed list of job duties that we would assign this position. And if we were able to allocate these duties just to one administrative analyst, it would grant the opportunity for our current staff to refocus and dedicate their time to their existent and significant project and program assignments. So any questions I am happy to answer.
All right, and Laura, can you just go back to the organizational chart? I think that's just a good focus area as we take questions from directors. All right, thank you all for that presentation. Director Dunbar.
Yes, if you can explain in the staff report, it says there is a fiscal impact, as you just identified, 85,000 plus. Is it budgeted? No. And that it'll be budgeted by Measure T 1% admin fund. What I don't understand is when it lists here the admin budget for fiscal 20 is 174,500 and fiscal 21, 195. How does the salary relate to the admin budget? And how does the salary relate to this admin analyst position that would already exist in this structure? I'm kind of an underlying question is this salary and position chasing after the budget of the Measure T funds, or is it following an existing structure within the organization?
Director Dunbar, let me respond to that. So what we budget in the under Measure T is the total administrative 1% that we are eligible to receive to oversee Measure T, not knowing exactly what potential expenses we could incur over that period. And then it gets rolled over. We are finding that we're not spending a ton of it right now because most of the work that we're doing on it is in-house and is budgeted elsewhere in NVTA planning dollars. So, I mean, in terms of, are we chasing the dollar? That is certainly not our objective. It's really to relieve the workload, which is really overwhelming. I think if you look in the other elements of the memo, you'll see how many staff members are assigned to other measures in the region. And also what's not included on here is, you know, Measure A flood has 3 full-time employees now, and the measure is sort of winding down. So I think we had hoped that we would be able to sort of move forward with the existing staff to manage Measure T, because after all, it was just this pass-through thing. But we're finding it's very work intensive, and it's just simply not something that we are managing well as the program continues to ramp up and more projects are being delivered.
So I'm not questioning the need for the work or the person. I'm still not getting clarity on how does the salary relate to our existing organizational structure, and how does it relate to the budget that we are expecting every year in administrative funds. Do they relate? Is this a sliding scale of 85,000? Then next year it's different because the budget is different. That's what I'm still trying to get some clarity on. And how does the 85,000 fit into the existing structure for job title?
Okay, so it's the same as I believe an associate planner level position, which is a position that this board has already authorized, and no, it would not change just because the budget changed.
What happens to the rest of the administrative money that would not go towards this one salary?
Well, we use it for things like publishing the biennial report. We have used it for other staff costs over the last couple of years. We would obviously start reallocating it directly to this position instead of distributing it all over the office. There's other expenses, you know, we've marketing the Measure T, updating the website. We also allocate a certain percentage of overhead to Measure T of our costs for housing staff, you know, the same thing that all of us do when you're apportioning basic costs that we need to have to, you know, office supplies, things like that. So those allocations, if we, you know, ran out of money, would obviously have to go towards be funded through planning. But I don't think that it's going to, obviously our costs can't go up. We still have the constraints of the amount of revenues that we're going to bring in. So I'm hoping that answers your question. If I'm not
getting closer.
Okay, then maybe
I'm looking at this org chart, and I don't see a comparable administrative analyst position listed. I see other titles. Where does it fit in here, and how does it compare?
So we don't have a position like that filled right now, but we have a position like that approved by this board and a pay scale. It's all part of our pay scale structure and our job descriptions that this board has approved in the past. And we are going to bring to you next month a review of that, but it's a pre-existing approved associate planner position. We just don't have any associate planners right now because they've been, you know, been here for years, and we promoted them to seniors. But at one point, the 2 senior or 3 seniors on the underneath Danielle were at one time associate planners.
So where are you putting it, Kate? I mean, it seems like a pretty straightforward question. Where does this fit into the structure? Well, it doesn't exist. I understand that. Where does it go? And what level of this org chart?
Okay, I'm sorry, Director. You're going to have to be. I don't understand what you're asking me.
Is it a senior management position? Is it an entry level position?
It's an entry level planning position.
Isn't it the green colored vacant Measure T position? Isn't that it?
That's it, yeah.
And then
That's not
so
what
who
it
does
is.
it report to?
Okay, look,
That's not
one at a
so
time, please.
let me just
Councilmember
finish.
Joseph.
That's
finish
not
your
the
thought, Mayor
position
Dunbar.
as it's listed for our approval today, is my question. So if it slots in at the bottom level here, where does that $85,000 salary fit below senior program planner administrator? That's all I'm asking. I'm not challenging
Well, the
the
org
need.
chart is not necessarily structured in a way of hierarchy, right? It's just this person will report to Danielle, who's the Director of Capital Development and Planning. This person will be taking a position that's called planner, assistant planner, which is a range of salaries. We don't currently have one of those positions because the other people who once started in those positions have been promoted to senior.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just to be clear, it's going to be part of those 4 kind of rectangles that fall under the Director of Capital Development and Planning. That's where this is where this position would be allocated.
Right. It's going to be housed under Danielle, and Danielle will have 5 positions reporting to her.
Perfect. All right, Director Joseph, I know you had a question. Thank you for trying to jump in and provide clarity.
Yeah, I mean, I recognize what Director Dunbar is saying because we call it an administrative assistant analyst in the staff report and an assistant planner in the org chart. So using the same term one way or the other, I'm assuming the salary is the same and all that. But the only comment I was going to make is if going back to the financial audit under the TA, it looks like 100% of that carryover is really the accumulated admin budget, the 1% admin. So it appears that there's going to be ample resources to pay one full-time person plus the miscellaneous operating expenses and overhead charges. And as the executive director pointed out, all you have to work with is that 1%. If you eat it up, you just have to live within that 1%, and anything left over allows you to use it 5-10 years down the road when everything goes up and the 1% doesn't. So I think the funding is secure and ample. And I do recognize now the kind of confusion between the reference in the staff report versus the chart, but at least we have a sense of what the organizational structure is going to look like.
Yeah, I think that, sorry for the confusion. And if that was what you were trying to clarify, Director Dunbar, my apologies, because I didn't see that it was different in the staff report, but it will be the same salary structure. And I think we would go out for a planner, assistant planner, because I think that we would end up getting, a different, we'd get more applications. So, and we don't have an assistant analyst position that I'm aware of. So, it would be my plan to go out for a planner, assistant planner.
All right, thank you, Director Joseph, Director Dunbar. Any other members have any questions before we see if there's any member of the public that wish to address us on this item? We don't have any public comment, Laura?
I do not.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board. Any additional questions, thoughts, concerns? All right, seeing none. Again, Kate, I appreciate the org chart. And I think one of the things that I would just say when we bring this back, just reflecting maybe the previous org chart and then the new org chart to reflect the changes, I think that would help just visually, right?
Right, and I think that sorry, apologies, but the title really should be planner, assistant planner. Yeah. And so when this board takes action on this today, it would be good if we make sure that that wasn't reflected in the minutes.
Right. Director Dunbar, final question?
Yeah, based on Director Joseph's point, if we set a salary and the Measure T budget, the funding of the Measure T is below that salary, am I hearing from what Director Joseph said, that position would be paid less? That doesn't make sense to me.
No, that's not what would happen. We would just have to identify other planning funds and reallocate them from one thing to another.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any final questions from any directors? If not, I will entertain a motion for approval. This is for item 10.1, the proposed organizational restructure.
I so move approval of 10.1.
All right, we have Vice Chair Alessio making the motion,
Second, Ellsworth.
second by Mayor Ellsworth. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Eric Knight,
Yes.
John Dunbar.
No.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much, Laura. Kate, thank you for your report out as well. So moving on to 10.2, Countywide Transportation Plan Advancing Mobility 2045 Public Drafts Release. This is found on page 187 to 194. Alberto, take it away.
Hello. Sorry, I'm getting settled because I'm doing those sweet things. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm here to present on item 10.2, NAPA's Long Range Transportation Plan Advancing Mobility 2045. This is a vision for the future transportation network of Napa County, and it includes all the projects and programs that we anticipate will be will be built over the next 25 years. As you may know, MTC requires us to update this plan every 4 to 5 years. And in their most recent revisions to their guidelines, MTC required NVTA to adopt performance metrics, which is one of the new elements of this plan. Here you see the last iteration of the plan, and we are moving forward to Advancing Mobility 2045. We began working on the CTP in 2019 when we kicked off the plan at the Transportation Summit. Many of you were there, and so were over 200 other public attendees. Following the Transportation Summit, we conducted a series of pop-up workshops throughout the county to solicit additional public comment. We also set up an online portal to gather input from those who couldn't attend the in-person workshop. And from these public comments and the input from the board, we were able to develop these goals for the plan. The comments from the public were very helpful, but we also had an ad hoc meeting in December of 2019 with some of the board members, which was very influential to the development and adjustment of these goals. The adopted goals and the objectives in the plan now act as a plan's framework and are the foundation for the project performance measures and the project evaluation criteria. In addition to developing project evaluation criteria, the plan also identifies potential future transportation scenarios. We analyzed 4 different scenarios through NVTA, through NVTA's activity-based travel model to understand the impacts of each scenario. The model is not detailed enough to be able to model each project individually. So projects were essentially grouped and modeled by mode instead of individual projects. I'll go briefly over each project, each scenario, so that have an idea of what was modeled. So scenario 1, what we call the basic plan, includes all the projects listed in the plan that can be modeled, except for frequency or bus frequencies of 30 minutes. Scenario 2 is the proposed plan. This scenario includes all the projects in the draft plan that can be modeled, and this includes that 30-minute bus frequency. Scenario 3, what we call Transit Plus, is the scenario where we increase frequency of all the routes. That would be local, regional, and express buses, and we also make all the routes free. Scenario 4 was dubbed SR29 Lane Plus. It includes all the projects in the plan that can be modeled except express bus frequency to 30 minutes. This scenario also includes the project to widen SR29 from 2 to 3 lanes from American Canyon Road to South Kelly Road. Excuse me. So after doing the modeling for all these 4 scenarios, the key findings from project modeling found that projects that cause the most significant change is the increase of transit frequency. So if we increase transit frequency and we decrease cost, in the model, again, it was modeled as free bus passes for everyone. That is those are the 2 elements that eventually lead to higher impact, and they lead to a lot of congestion. So it's not necessarily that we're seeing a decrease in delay, but more people are shifting from driving alone to using the bus. Excuse me. So ultimately, jurisdictions submitted over 100 projects, and they totaled approximately $1.5 billion. However, NVTA forecasts only show that we will be receiving $704 million in net revenues over those 25 years. So considering the project submission and the forecasted revenues, we anticipate roughly a $754 million shortfall over the 25 years, $638 million for roadways and active transportation projects, and approximately $117 million in shortfall for transit projects. Here you can see the cost by mode and agency. I think it's important to note that NVTA typically sponsors highway projects, so that's why you see a higher total in NVTA's bar. So for example, some of the projects that NVTA is sponsoring is the Madison Street Interchange or the SR29 project through American Canyon, and those are all lumped in NVTA's category. So while it's unrealistic that all the projects will be built due to funding constraints, I think building this comprehensive project list does ensure that these projects are recognized as potential funding candidates for funding in MTC. Because if these projects all eventually roll up to the Regional Transportation Plan, which is Plan Bay Area 2050, and its projects are typically not in the countywide transportation plan, it is hard for them to receive funding. So in summary, the countywide transportation plan will help Napa County address current needs, adapt to future trends, and compete for funding regionally and statewide. So I invite you to take a look at the plan at NVTAtransportationplan.org and join us for these online events, which Kate mentioned earlier at the beginning of the meeting. We'll have 2 on April 7th from 5 to 6. Excuse me. This will be a Facebook Live discussion with Director Pedroza and some Spanish-speaking staff from City of Napa and County of Napa. The following day, on April 8th, we will be hosting a Q&A session with the project team from 5:30 to 6:30. And we will send out all the information for you to sign up. Actually, if you go to NVTA-transportationplan.org, you should be able to click on register, and that will take you directly to the Eventbrite page where you can register for this event. And I will, like Kate mentioned, I will send out all the information once after the meeting if the board does approve the release of the plan. So in conclusion, I'm requesting that the board release the public draft for public review and comment. And it's at its March meeting, the Technical Advisory Committee also recommended that the NVTA board release the plan for public review and comments. So I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, please feel free.
Thank you, Alberto. Great presentation. This is exciting to talk about, the future. I think in 2045, Mayor Canning is still going to be, 40 years old. So we're excited about the future, as he is too. But, what I will say this, just getting exposure to some of the regional discussions, state and federal discussions around the future of transportation, I do see less funding being made available to increasing our capacity, expanding freeways and so forth. So I think what I found really compelling in this presentation was those investments in multimodal kind of improvements, making our current systems more efficient, kind of working within the means, but also trying to innovate and seeing how you can repurpose, current roadways and infrastructure, more green space. I think that's exciting. And that's what I see in this plan as there's a lot of things that we're not going to be able to afford at this point in time, but it's having the goals and objectives and then working towards closing that disparity in funding and resources. And that's why we need to try to secure additional resources. But again, just a really exciting plan here. So thank you, Alberto, for your work on that. Director Canning.
Yes, thank you, Alberto. Great presentation. Appreciate that. Just to parlay off something that you just said there, Alfredo, some of us on this board also sit on the Climate Action Committee board, and we are often challenged and sometimes disparaged for not doing enough. And there are a lot of things we do on a regular basis, and this is one agency and certainly one particular element of what we're demonstrating, actions we're taking, suggestions we're making, that I think gets lost in the shuffle. So appreciate the work you're doing on this, and appreciate you being able to arm us to go back, inform us to go back and share with some of those folks that challenge that we're not doing anything, that indeed there are a lot of different elements and efforts. There's not a silver bullet to climate change. There are a multitude of things, and this is certainly an important element to that. So thank you for that, Alberto. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Director Canning. Director Ellsworth.
I want to say thank you for this presentation as well. Excellent. And I want to support Mayor Canning in this recognition of the sort of crossover here with this work in the Climate Action Committee, and just sort of wondering if at some point this version of this presentation can come forward to the Climate Action Committee. So as we circle in with those folks, we get it all on our radar. So I just wanted to support that linkage and appreciate Mayor Canning bringing that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ellsworth. Director Joseph.
Yes, I appreciate the presentation as well. And I appreciate the rationale behind trying to shift the mode. I struggle, as you can probably imagine, and maybe because I'm from American Canyon and we struggle with a constrained bottleneck, that at the end of the day, shifting the mode accomplishes the objective, which is to shift the mode. It doesn't, in my opinion, address the congestion. And I appreciate the fact that for reasons that I don't understand, the state doesn't want to invest in capacity. But at some point, American Canyon is probably going to shut down the unofficial 6 lanes of 29 by eliminating the cut through traffic. And then we'll see what happens to the lack of addressing capacity. So as the official naysayer for this project, I will just say once again, we need to pay attention to capacity, politically incorrect as it may be, because at the end of the day, you know, I think our residents expect that, and our commuters are yelling at us about it. So that's my comment.
All right, thank you, Director Joseph. Director Garcia.
Yes, thank you. Interesting presentation. I like forward-thinking concepts. How much increase in effectiveness in our transit system, alternate plans, will we have to have in place, just as in terms of analysis, to make an impact on the 50,000 cars a day come through American Canyon? Well, and come up Valley, by the way, too. I mean, that piece is missing for me. I mean, it's great to, what's our bus capacity right now? How good are we doing with transit versus how many cars have we got off the highway? There's an analytical piece that needs to be, that would inform this whole project. I agree with Director Joseph on this. You know, it's overlooking the real 400-pound gorilla in the road, so to speak. Everybody's in cars. Why? When the other piece of that is, well, because they can't afford to live where they work. The Climate Action said they want to get rid of all your gasoline-powered cars. All right, well, if you could cut that in half, if you have an hour and a half commute right now, if you made it only 45 minutes from work, you consume much less gasoline. So you can't talk about reducing impact of congestion in on the highways without talking about housing. That's my perspective on it. But yeah, speaking to this one, so where's the analysis that says this is how many people we have on transit now? This is our capacity for these alternate modes. How many vehicles would that reduce? I'd like to hear that.
All right, thank you, Director Garcia. I'm not sure if staff is prepared to get into that type of linear analysis, but Alberto or Director Miller have any comments to respond?
Well, I would just say that the modeling we used was not necessarily the number of vehicles, but rather the headways, how frequent we provided buses. And so, because obviously the more convenient you make transit, the more likely people are going to get on the bus, especially if you make that free. So there's a couple of ways that we use those numbers to understand how many more people we think we could get on the bus. And that modeling showed that we make a lot more headway at reducing vehicle miles traveled than any of the other things that we modeled. And we didn't model, we had, four models because every time we run the model, it's a hugely expensive investment. So, and the other thing that we're working with the regional level, which I think is going to be huge, is a regional effort that improves how buses are able to use the highway infrastructure, prioritizing them, including things like shoulder running. So when we get those kinds of things going, and I think we have some opportunities to do that in county, I think then riding the bus is going to be a lot more competitive than what it is now. So we have the same constraints that automobiles do now, and you're right, it's not ideal. But we're trying to work with what we have. We're trying to stay within the sort of, emerging technology and emerging planning desires by all the people that give us money. And so that's where our constraints, and we feel your pain.
Well, thank you. Appreciate your response to that. I would say I would offer that if we're just looking at transit within, for example, within Napa County, what's the number of folks that are coming in from outside the county? Where do they live? Trying to get to work in here, because
so our express bus, our express bus is very focused on moving the people that live in the county to the places where they work in the Central Bay area. That's an easier group to capture because they're all starting from one place. They all come back to one place. Our workers come from 4 different counties primarily, and it would be a very expensive proposition to accommodate those. We are Before the pandemic, we were really focused on getting people out on the Ride Amigos app and finding ways for them to share rides with their neighbors to reduce the traffic. MTC has done a lot of studies, and it shows really if we just incrementally move the needle in one direction, we can all experience a much better commute. And so that was our effort there. The pandemic created a whole new game for us. People aren't taking transit, as you know, they're not taking it anywhere. We're about 60% off from what we were providing. We are hoping that that comes back, but nobody's using TDM. I mean, most of us are not willing to get into a car with a stranger right now, not knowing what their health status is. Plus, we're all working from home. So, or not all of us, but a lot of us are working from home. But as the economy ramps back up, we'll have those opportunities to implement those programs again.
We'll follow it closely. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Director Garcia. All right. Let me see, Laura, do we have any members of the public that wish to comment on 10.2?
There are none.
All right. And we do have some writing on the screen, and we are working on that, trying to get that removed just for anyone watching. So
I think Mayor Sedgley may have to remove that. I'm not sure how to do that.
Okay, we'll troubleshoot it here. I'll bring it back to the board and see if there's any further discussions. If not, I will entertain a motion for approval of the countywide transportation plan, Advancing Mobility 2040. This is to release the draft. And again, thank you to
So moved,
staff
Canning.
for all the work that went into it.
Second, Kraus.
All right, we have a Calistogas in the house. First by Canning, second by Kraus. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Eric Knight,
Yes.
and John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Laura. Moving on to 10.3, project priorities for the Metropolitan Transportation Commission Safe and Seamless Mobility Quick Strike Programs, found on page 195 to 217. Danielle, I believe you're presenting this. Take it away.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chair Perdoza, members of the board. Danielle Schmitz here to present item 10.3, project priorities for the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's Safe and Seamless Mobility Quick Strike Program. The action before the board today is to approve resolutions 2110 and 2111 and authorize the executive director to submit a nomination letter and supporting documentation for the MTC Safe and Seamless Mobility Quick Strike Program for the Napa Forward SR29 safety and operational improvements and the Napa County Safe Routes to School program for fiscal years 2021 to 2023. In February, MTC released a call for quick strike projects under the Safe and Seamless Mobility Program. MTC has roughly $55 million available funding. $5 million will be taken off the top for the Blue Ribbon Transit Task Force priorities, leaving $50 million for this program. The funding is conditioned under the One Bay Area Grant Program, what we refer to on the staff level as OBAG, and you've probably heard that before as we've done different OBAG call for projects. The Safe and Seamless Mobility Program emphasizes capital projects and bicycle and safety projects that advance equitable mobility, including projects that promote safe and seamless mobility along a transportation corridor, and countywide implementation of programs that promote safety and mobility, such as safe routes programs. MTC cannot distribute the funding on a formula basis, but has established loose county targets based on previous OBAG formula. Napa County's target would be roughly $1 million. However, projects that demonstrate regional coordination are given a higher priority and may garner additional funding from the region. NVTA is proposing putting forward two projects, the Napa Forward project, as well as the Safe Routes to School program project. NVTA has been working with MTC on the intersection improvements at Highway 29 and Rutherford and Oakville Crossroad for the last several months. MTC has already set aside $1 million for the project. The roundabouts would greatly improve traffic operations and increase safety for those turning left onto the highway, especially for the most vulnerable users such as bicyclists. NVTA is in coordination with Chair Petroza, have met with many of the property owners surrounding the two intersections, and so far they've indicated support of such improvements. NVTA is requesting $11 million for the two roundabouts, but the project is scalable, meaning if we are awarded less funding, we can still complete a portion of the project. In addition, NVTA is applying for $100,000 in partnership with the Napa County Bicycle Coalition for the Safe Routes to School program for fiscal years 2021 to 2023. Napa Bike is requesting $100,000 to supplement the current Safe Routes to School program in future fiscal years, to conduct targeted outreach and encouragement programming at elementary and middle schools countywide, build a network of parent champions at targeted schools to continue and expand engagement, and conduct broad-based community encouragement and education programs specifically focused on Spanish-speaking populations and locally identified communities of concern. Staff feels that both the Napa Forward and Safe Routes to School projects meet the eligibility criteria under the Connected Mobility Framework. Due to the regional partnership with MTC on the Napa Forward project, NVTA is hopeful that the proposed project will garner additional funds above the quick strike target threshold. This program is moving fast, hence why we're asking the board to approve the resolutions of local support now. Project nomination materials are due at the end of the month, and so staff's been working with MTC on completing all the required documents. MTC staff will have a released list of proposed project sponsors in May, and then request final documentation from all project sponsors by the end of May. And then the commission is scheduled to approve projects at their June 2021 meeting. All funds for this program must be obligated by September of 2022, so 18-month schedule. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have at this time. Again, the action before the board is to approve the two resolutions and authorize the executive director to submit the project application materials by the end of the month.
Thank you very much, Danielle, for your very succinct presentation and describing the opportunity before us to try to bring outside resources into our community. All right, so we do see some hands raised. We also have members of the public. So let's start with Director Dunbar and then Director Joseph.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Danielle. I'll lead off by saying I'm supporting this, including the Safe Routes to School component, but I have a question about that piece. We continue to hear from the Napa Unified School District about potential consolidation and closures of schools. And so I just want to be aware of, as we create safe routes, if we're literally physically creating streets that are safer and more attractive to students riding their bikes to campuses, are we sure those campuses are going to be there? And then is this money kind of more, is it softer money? Is it more about education, outreach, encouragement of using those different modes of transportation that aren't as directly impacted if a site were to transition to another use?
Yeah, Member Dunbar, you're correct. It's more of a programmatic category. So it's about the educational component, the outreach, and point taken. So definitely we would, we're kind of saying, oh, we're going to do 14 school sites, but we don't maybe specifically have to mention them, or we can provide flexibility within the application. So if there was a future school site to be closed down, it wouldn't take away from any funding that we could garner from the program.
Great, thank you.
Director Dunbar. Director Joseph.
Just a quick question. Are there any matching requirements for these funds?
It is federal funding, so usually there is a matching requirement, but under this program, they have allowed for toll credits to match the federal funding, so there would be no matching requirement on NVTA.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Joseph. See no other members from the board. Let's go to the public. Laura, and I do see at least one member of the public wishes.
We do. Sorry, I was on mute. We have Patrick Band. I am unmuting you, Patrick.
Thank you very much. Patrick Band, Executive Director, Napa County Bicycle Coalition. I'll keep my comments very brief. I want to thank staff for being supportive of this request. As members of the board are very well aware, our current Safe Routes to Schools program, which has been operating for the past 3 years, is coming to a close later this calendar year. And this source of funding could serve as a critical bridge to ensure that that program does not end abruptly. Nevertheless, it doesn't address the long-term need for a permanent source of funding to not just continue, but expand the programmatic element of the Safe Routes to Schools program. And so we continue to look forward to working with members of the board, NVTA staff, and local jurisdictions to identify those opportunities. And I also want to reference Mr. Dunbar's question about the infrastructure and programmatic work. That's something we've been paying very close attention to during our current programming when we've been evaluating existing infrastructure and barriers around public schools, looking at not just where are school closures occurring, but also where there may be schools that will have an increase in student population due to mergers at a later date. And as you know, we're already seeing that. And so that's very front of mind for our team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. Laura, do we have any other members of the public?
I'm seeing none.
All right, we'll bring it back to the board for any discussion. I do want to thank Director Miller. She's been instrumental in reaching out to MTC, again, trying to bring more resources to Napa County, especially around some of these projects that we're trying to fund and some of the outreach we've done. Again, it really showcases what we can do here in Napa County and represents Napa County very well at MTC when we can mobilize quickly and try to bring also private sector support for some of these projects. So I do see one other member that has raised their hand, Director Doring.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very supportive of both of these projects. I'm just curious about the first paragraph of each resolution, the first whereas. I'm not sure if this is sort of a template or not. It says is submitting something. It seems like it's already presupposed that it's being submitted. So I'm not sure if we're authorizing a submittal or we're supporting a submittal. Very technical language, but it seems like that doesn't appear appropriate in that kind of a whereas, that we're already submitting it and yet we're authorizing the submittal. Just a clarification there to make sure that our language is appropriate.
Right, so we will be submitting that. So as mentioned, this program is moving quite quickly. And so we're taking the resolutions of local support a little bit in advance because they are due by, I believe, the end of the month. But, you know, we're meeting March 17th. And then this is standard template for MTC's discretionary funding for any of the federal funds that they have listed under FHWA or the CTC, that this is their template that we use. So it's a standard resolution of local support we often pass when we have federal funding at stake.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Director Doring.
Mr. Chair, if I may, motion approval of staff recommendation. Is it Dunbar?
I'll second.
All right.
Vice Chair
All right,
Leslie.
we have first by Director Dunbar, second by Vice Chair Lesio. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Now, is this motion for the safe schools and the roundabouts or which?
It's one motion. It's one motion, Director Krause.
Okay, now,
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Eric Knight,
Yes.
John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Right. Moving on to 10.4. This is an agreement 21-07 with GMB Synchromatics to acquire a computer-aided dispatch automatic vehicle locator system. Page 218 to 243. Rebecca, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Chairman Pedroza. Members of the board, my name is Rebecca Schenk and I'm the program manager here at NVTA for Public Transit. And as I mentioned, it's item number 10.4, and staff is asking the NVTA board to authorize the executive director to execute and make minor modifications for a contract with GMV Synchromatics for a period not to exceed 5 years for a new CAD AVL system. So first off, what is a CAD AVL system? So I don't know if it's in your list of acronyms there. It's basically a system that allows buses to be tracked and for dispatchers and the public to see the locations of the buses in real time. In a way, it's kind of a smartwatch for a bus. It tells you where the bus is currently, how far it went that day, how much gas it utilized, and what's the overall health of the bus. Does it need maintenance? Things like that. And then alternatives to this, besides the staff recommendation today, the board could decide not to authorize the executive director to enter into a contract with GMC Synchromatics, which would then result in one of the following. The bind system could continue to operate the existing CAD AVL system and integrate with Clipper 2.0, which is the regional fare system being instituted by MTC through what's called the General Transit Feed Specification real time, which is what way that other legacy CAD AVL systems are integrating into Clipper 2.0. With this new CAD AVL system, we will be able to go more directly and link with the new Clipper 2.0 system. Or the other option, the alternative would be that the board could request that NVTA staff release a new RFP for a new CAD AVL system independent of other agencies. In terms of agency goals on this, it touches on 4 of our major goals. And if you want to see the details, they'll be outlined there in the board item. And this board item is really important though, because our existing CAD AVL system was purchased in 2014 and the contract has already been extended twice. So it was time for us to go out for a new RFP. And NVTA staff thought that there was really room for improvement in our existing system performance due to advances in technology and the need to integrate with the new Clipper 2.0 system. So in terms of the process to date, so the original procurement, NVTA first purchased this, as I mentioned, in 2014 in a joint procurement with Petaluma Transit and Soltrans out of Solano County. Only 2 proposals were received at that time back in 2014, and the selection committee recommended that Avail Technologies be selected, and they installed their CAD AVL system on the Vine buses in 2015 at a cost of $2.9 million. So you can kind of think of this in a way, if you purchased a video camera, say in 1990, right, you might have paid a few $1,000s for it. But if you bought a video camera, say 7 years later in 1999, you could buy it for half the price and get twice as much. So I feel like that's where we are at this point in time. So this new procurement, we partnered this time with Santa Rosa City Bus, Petaluma Transit, and Fairfield Bassoon Transit Fast to do a RFI, a request for information, to kind of better understand the technologies and the capabilities out there. And so this time we got 12 responses to the RFI, and an evaluation committee comprised of staff members from all 4 agencies then shortlisted 6 vendors to participate in the RFP process. So very different from, if you remember in the 2014, as I mentioned, we just had gotten 2 proposals. So we had 12 with the RFI. We brought it down to 6 as part of the RFP, and we invited those 6 vendors to respond to the RFP. And that RFP was released on December 18th of 2020. And then we received 5 responses. They were reviewed by the transit agencies. And at that point, FAST had decided to no longer participate. They were going to delay their procurement. So it was Santa Rosa, Petaluma, and NVTA. While the reviewers collectively rated GMV Synchromatics higher in all areas, each transit operator will enter into a separate contract with one of the final vendors. And NVTA staff specifically ranked GMV Synchromatics first, and then entered into negotiations on a price. And you'll see the draft agreement for a period of 3 years with the option for 2 one-year extensions at the discretion of staff, which is provided in attachment 1. In terms of funding, this would be funded by our Transportation Development Act funds, the total amount being $1.1 million. And the base price in the year one service and warranty are already budgeted in our biannual budget. We anticipated kind of these costs when we did the biannual 2021, 2022, 21, 22 budget. And then the later years, the service and warranty will be budgeted accordingly. Should NVTA receive Regional Measure 3 funds, and they become available prior to the end of the CAD-AVL contract, then we would use those funds to help defray the cost in the outer years. The next steps on the NVTA side would be to enter into and finalize the contract document between NVTA and GMV. And to recap, what I'm asking today is that the board approve item 10.4, which is agreement 21-07 with GMV Synchromatics to acquire a computer-aided dispatch and automated vehicle location system.
All right, thank you very much, Rebecca, for your thorough presentation. Any questions from directors? Director Ellsworth.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a question on looking at it says on the existing system or the new system that's being proposed, year one service plus warranty, year two service plus warranty with that price tag.
Yes.
The current system we have, are we currently paying a similar service and warranty every year?
We are, yes. The total for that one was $2.9 million over the 5-year period, and kind of similar in that it had a bulk 1-year price, right, where you purchase like the hardware, and then we did service and warranty each year thereafter, and that came up to the 2.9 million.
Okay, and so if we were to stick with the existing system, we would still be paying a service and warranty every year in line with what's on this new proposal?
Correct. Yes, slightly different number, but in the same ballpark, in the $100,000 range.
Okay.
And Director Ellsworth, I just also wanted to point out that in the memo, we talk a little bit of, we might have mentioned it, but one of the reasons that prompted us to go out to bid is because we needed a cost to integrate Clipper 2 with our CAD-AVL system, and the existing provider quoted over $500,000 to do that, which, it was just seemed so cost prohibitive to sort of build onto a waning system. So that's why we're here now.
Very good. Thank you.
And just so you understand, we did also receive a proposal from Avail Technologies, which is our current CAD-AVL provider. And they were proposing to also do a lot of hardware replacement. So their cost was also significant, I guess, in that if we were to even stick with Avail, we might still have some new hardware costs due to the, say, expiration of some of our existing hardware.
All right, thank you, Director Ellsworth. Do we have any other directors with any questions? Director Doring.
I'm hoping and assuming that the answer to my question is no, but I figured I'd ask it anyway because I'm somewhat distrustful of technology in general. I assume that there aren't any security or privacy issues that are implicated by this kind of technology. Obviously, it's tracking the vehicle and not the individuals. Can you talk about that and assure me that that is not an issue here?
Yeah, we have not seen that be an issue. Basically, every major mass transit provider in the country would have some type of system like this. We did talk really specifically about, we do have like onboard Wi-Fi, for example, on our buses, and about that being a separate system from this system. So if you were in the, the Wi-Fi, you couldn't go over to the other system, and kind of vice versa. So some thought was given on that front. And right, there's nothing that tracks the individual. We do have passenger counters, but all that does is it basically says, and it could be you or a stroller or whatever it might be, it just shoots out basically 2 lasers, and you break the first laser and then the second, and it says that something got on to the bus, right? Person or horse or whatever it might be, and then it breaks and comes off. So it's not tracking any individuals.
We do have cameras on the bus, and we also have disclaimers posted inside the bus, but those cameras, Director Doring, are required by the Department of Homeland Security.
Thank you.
All right. Deanna, do you have, I see your hand is raised?
Yeah. Thank you. This is Deanne Gillick, a general counsel. I just wanted to note for the actual approval resolution, the agreement in your packet is a draft, and there's an inconsistency on the term of the agreement. The staff's intent is consistent with the staff report, which is 3 years with 2 one-year extensions. So just wanted the motion to reflect the ability to make those editorial changes to the actual approved agreement. So it's consistent.
Got it.
The term.
Thank
Thank you.
We'll make sure there's consistency there. Let me see if there's any members of the public that wish to address the board on this item, 10.4.
There are not.
All right, we'll bring it back to the board, and if there's no further discussion, we'll entertain a motion for approval with the language consistency as advised by our council.
So moved. Garcia.
Okay,
Dunbar,
first by
second.
Garcia, second by Dunbar. Roll call vote, please.
Dan Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Eric Knight,
Aye.
John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks, Rebecca. Moving on to 10.5, loan agreement with Bank of Marin. Down on page 244 to 265. Antonio, take it away.
Yes, hello again. For item 10.5, staff is asking the board to approve resolution 21-06, authorizing the executive director to negotiate and execute a loan agreement with the Bank of Marin in the amount of $5 million. As you recall from last month's board meeting, staff presented the conceptual financing package to the board for the maintenance facility with a portion of those costs financed through a secondary bank loan. NVTA has been in discussions with 2 financial institutions where the agency already has a pre-existing relationship, U.S. Bank and Bank of Marin, on developing acceptable terms and conditions to secure a loan. After careful consideration, NVTA staff is recommending continuing negotiations with Bank of Marin as a preferred lender. Although U.S. Bank had more competitive interest rates, they also wanted to impose additional covenants on our local transportation funds, our LTF funds, which would restrict NVTA's liquidity that could disrupt operations or the progression of other projects we have in our pipeline. As such, staff could not agree to these additional encumbrances on its financial assets. Bank of Marin had no such restrictions or covenants. In January, the board approved resolutions to file a letter no prejudice to MTC to allow NVTA use its own funds so that if and when RM3 funds became available, NVTA can repay itself or pay back the private loan with no prepayment penalty. The Bank of Marin loan will be secondary, and to mitigate borrowing costs, the loan will be used after the TIFIA funds have been fully drawn down. And again, in the event RM3 funds become available and begin to flow, NVTA will be able to pay back the loan with no prepayment penalty. And ideally, NVTA, we hope that we don't use a loan at all. And RM3, there's a favorable outcome in RM3 prior to us making any drawdowns on the loan. The Build America Bureau requires that all funding sources have been identified and secured, which is the reason why we are requesting the additional loan. In the memo, you can see the amortization table, as well as the LTF revenues we are expected to receive versus the amount of debt service, showing that NVTA has sufficient funding and liquidity to accommodate this loan. Just to reiterate, NVTA is asking the board to approve resolution 2106, authorizing the executive director to negotiate and execute a loan with the Bank of Marin. And with that,
Great,
I can
thank you
take
very-
questions. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Antonio. Any questions from directors at this time? Laura, do we have any members of the public that wish to address the board on this item?
We do not.
All right, I'll bring it back. Director Dunbar.
I'll move the staff recommendation, but I first want to acknowledge that it was a very smart decision to postpone the original staff report on this and to get a better, less exposed, I'd say, set of loan conditions. So thank you for keeping open-minded to a new alternative, but I'll move the staff recommendation.
Right. Thank you, Director Dunbar. Looking for a
Joseph, second.
Second by Director Joseph. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning,
Yes.
Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Petroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Eric Knight,
Yes.
John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much, Laura. Moving on to 10.6, federal state legislative update found on page 266 to 279.
Great.
Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair Pedrosa. You probably heard that the American Rescue Act, which will be a $1.9 trillion bailout act, was passed and signed into law by the president. It will provide $30.5 billion for transit, and that translates to roughly $1.7 billion for the MTC region. MTC staff has already indicated that they will be distributing these funds in a couple of tranches. And while $5 million came into the Napa urbanized area, it's unlikely that we're going to get that much money, but we will keep you posted. Earmarks are back, maybe. We got a couple of announcements, one from the chair of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, Chair Peter DeFazio, saying that they are looking into putting earmarks back into the surface transportation bill. The current bill, the FAST Act, is due to expire in September. That timing is in line with that. We also received a solicitation from Senator Feinstein's office, and we are working with Congressman Thompson's office to make sure that we stay on top of this. Senator Feinstein's office also sent out other environmental and public works potential earmarking, and I distributed that to your public works staff, so they are all in the loop on that. On the state side, the December and January receipts were $10.3 billion higher than projected. That bumps the surplus to $15 billion and then makes way for a lot of early action budget items, including $9.5 billion stimulus package, AB 86 and SB 86. I'm not sure if the 86 number has got a ring to it, and whether that's intentional or not, who knows. The Assembly passed its version, is now considering Senate amendments. So we'll keep you posted on that. It would provide funding for individuals, small businesses, restaurant fee and license relief, and funding to reopen schools. On the bill matrix, there's 5 bills requesting your action. The first one, AB 117, is an electric bicycle rebate pilot project. Staff requests that the board take a support position on that bill. And then the other bills are all watch. Most of them have to do, well, one of them was brought back from last year. This is this idea where cyclists can just come to the intersection and slow down if there are no cars, or stop if there are cars and wait until it's their turn to proceed safely. Staff is proposing a watch on that. Also, there's a couple here about changing public meetings. And I think these are somewhat to do with what's going on with the pandemic. But one would require that we have the ability to translate it to 10 languages, and also have a American Sign Language translator, and then certain abilities to hold local emergency meetings and things like that. So that's AB 361 and AB 339. Staff is proposing that the board take watch positions on those bills. And then finally, there is one bill that we have not been able to kind of wrap our head around yet, and we're thinking there's probably going to be some amendments, but it would change the way the Regional Transportation Planning Agency's deadline for submitting STA eligibility reports, and there's some timing issues with this. We don't know if there's any implications to how the funding would flow, and so we just want right now the board to watch that as well. So again, there's 5 5 bills for you to take action on.
All right, thank you, Director Miller. Before we go to the public, and I do see hand raised, do we have any questions, comments from directors? Director Joseph.
Yes, this is an aside, but the letters of support, the one to Congressperson Nancy Pelosi has a signature by Dianne Feinstein. Is that a different Dianne Feinstein?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
There's, in fact, it's spelled differently too. She's the manager of the fast transit, Fairfield too soon.
Okay, just struck me as peculiar. But other than that, I agree with staff's recommendations. I was just curious.
Thank you, Director Joseph. Good catch. All right, Laura, do you see we have members of the public that wish to comment on this item?
I do. Patrick Band, I asked to unmute you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I'll be short here. Really applaud staff for the recommendation of support for AB 117. This would provide $10 million over a roughly 6-year period for electric bicycle incentive programs. We've had these types of programs in place for a number of years for electric vehicles, and this will provide a certain level of equity for those individuals who don't want to or don't have the capacity to own a personal vehicle. Secondly, we want to let the directors and staff know that we participated in a press conference yesterday with Assemblymember David Chu on the release of AB 550, which is a modification of a bill that was introduced 2 years ago that would establish a pilot program for automated speed enforcement, speed cameras throughout the state. And again, a pilot program that would allow jurisdictions to opt in to a limited pilot program as the potential for speed limit cameras are explored in the state. This is a tool that's been used successfully in states across the country for decades. And it's really exciting that California has the opportunity to move forward with that. We'll certainly be following up with directors individually and each of your city councils and the Board of Supervisors recommending and requesting support for AB 550, but just want to bring that to everybody's attention today. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Patrick. Laura, do we have any members of the public?
We do not.
All right, I'll bring it back to the board for motion.
Dunbar, move the staff recommendations.
Joseph, second.
All right, we have first by Dunbar, second by Joseph. Roll call vote, please.
Leon Garcia,
Yes.
Mark Joseph,
Yes.
Chris Canning, Gary Kraus,
Yes.
Liz Alessio,
Aye.
Scott Sedgley,
Yes.
Alfredo Pedroza,
Yes.
Belia Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Doring,
Yes.
Jeff Ellsworth,
Yes.
Eric Knight,
Yes.
John Dunbar.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Sorry,
Right.
guys, this is Canning. Did you catch that? I was stuck between a computer and a telephone audio.
I did, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you all. Moving on to future agenda items. Do we have any? Seeing none, we'll move on to closed session, which we do have a need for closed session. Deanne, I'll confer to you to make sure I read all the disclosures properly. Conference with legal counsel, existing litigation pursuant Government Code Section 54956.9 D2, claim of Mary Elizabeth Jackson versus City of Napa et al. Versus Napa Superior Court case number 20 CV 000021. Also, 11.2 Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Government Code Section 54957B1, title Executive Director. Deanne, at this time, are we okay to go into closed session?
We are. We will meet in closed session on the items on the agenda as they've been read. And there's no anticipated report, but we will return to open session to conclude the meeting.
All right, so from a logistical perspective, what do board directors need to do and what do members of the public need to do?
Members of the public are welcome to stay on if they'd like in the open session. Those that will be participating in the closed session, you will momentarily be transferred by staff here at NVTA to the breakout room. So just hold tight for a moment while we get everyone transferred over.
Thank you.
No one do anything. We'll momentarily get moved into a different room. Virtual room.
It takes a moment to get everyone over.
No worries.
Beam us up, Laura.
Just an opportunity to welcome Eric Knight to our meetings. Good to see you,
Yes.
Eric.
Yes, welcome, Eric.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, best
Thank
wishes to Carrie also.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to serve as an alternate for Vice Mayor Dorman. I served on NVTA 20 years ago, so it's good to be back and support the good work of the directors and the NVTA right now and in the future. Thank you.
Laura, I have a window that's telling me to join. Do you want us to be joining with this button or not?
Yes.
Hi, Laura. So I'm going to step out of the room for a few minutes.
Okay.
So if you, hopefully I'll be back. Okay.
Not a problem.
Uh-huh.
Hi, Laura.
Hi.
So it looks like Tony just exited the meeting, I think.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, which is fine.
Yeah. And so what's going to happen now is the board is going to, I'll text you.
Okay.
I figured I should say like everything.
Laura? Are you still there? I'm just going to use the restroom real quick. So if they call me back, just hopefully.
Not a problem.
Okay.
And this is Deanne, and I'm back to being in the room. So.
Hi, Deanne.
Thanks, Deanne.
Thank you.
Kathy, to confirm, the closed session is paused on recording or not being recorded. We're still live on YouTube right now, correct?
Yes, the recording is paused. However, we are live on YouTube. The other, I mean, I can stop YouTube and then start it up again, but
No, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure that the closed session was still private.
Scott, are you in the wrong room? You know how to get back into the other room.
Thank you.
Click on breakout rooms and then hit join breakout room. You see it?
Well, I went to my phone.
Yeah.
Scott, I'm actually going to send you back in there.
Okay.
You should have a window popping up that you need to click on.
You know what,
can
Kathy?
close- I
I
can
think
close
what happened
roses.
is he switched to his iPhone.
Yeah, my iPad, the battery was dying.
Uh-oh.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave this meeting here that it says leave.
Yeah. No, you should click on your iPhone. Click on.
On the phone, it always,
join.
only thing I see is cancel or leave meeting. Maybe hit
Kathy, we'll
cancel.
have to assign the Scott's iPhone to the closed session in addition to his Mayor Sedge that's still in the closed session.
Yeah, I've already assigned him, so
Oh,
there
I
must
see.
be something he needs to click on.
Let me go here.
There, I think.
There he goes.
Yeah.
I didn't see that you were so quick to that, Kathy. Good job.
Well, no, I saw him pop up in the unassigned. And so I assigned him, but I wasn't sure what he was holding on to and what he was seeing. That was leave meeting. It's like,
I don't think he's in there.
he's in the breakout room now.
Oh, I don't see his.
Yeah, you don't see him because he's in the breakout room.
No, right, but I see the closed session people
Oh,
on
maybe
my screen.
Oh, on your screen?
maybe he clicked the
Yeah.
wrong thing.
Yeah, he's not on in there. The old one is.
The old one is, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Okay, so maybe he did leave the meeting and maybe he needs to sign back in.
He's gonna have to sign back in from his
Yeah.
iPhone.
Okay, I'll watch for him.
Bummer. He's probably my only advocate right now.
He'll get back in.
The device he was originally signed in on is still showing,
Yeah, so that's still logged in.
yeah, in the breakout room.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Alberto, are you still there? Guess not. Laura, do you have any idea how Scott was able to draw on the screen?
Yes, yes, I'm still here.
How did that happen?
I have no idea. That was very strange.
Alberto, how did you know it was Mayor
Yeah.
Sedgley that did that?
It was telling me that it was his mouse was over it. His name was on the line.
But he would have had to been like a co-host. Is he a co-host?
No.
No, he's not a co-host, but I think when you're sharing a PowerPoint, people somehow have the ability to do that.
Huh.
I've never seen that before.
What's that Stephen King novel where there's like the writing keeps coming up in various surfaces? I forgot. Scary messages. Oh boy. I have to stare at my phone because I have to wait for Alfredo to text me. And I guess I could make a noise, huh? I have to remember to turn it off.
All right. We are back, Laura, and I'm not sure if Deanna's on.
Yes, I am here.
All right, we are back, and I'm assuming we're live with the public at this point, so we can report out.
So the board met in closed session on the items listed on the agenda.
Correct, and we had no reportable action on 11.1 and 11.2.
Great.
All right, so seeing no further business before the board, we're going to adjourn to our next meeting, April 21st at 1:30 p.m. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the public for participating.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.